My wife brought her new boyfriend to dinner and said, "He's everything you're not." I was cutting into my steak when she dropped that bomb, her voice dripping with the kind of satisfaction that comes from landing what she thought was an eliminating blow. Sarah had been building up to this moment for weeks, dropping hints about her friend Kyle, how exciting he was, how he understood her needs. I'd been playing the oblivious husband, pretending not to notice her late nights and secretive phone calls. The thing is, when you've spent 15 years running black ops for the military and another 5 building a private intelligence firm, you notice everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every carefully constructed deception. But sometimes you let people hang themselves with their own rope. "David, this is Kyle Mason," Sarah announced, her hand possessively on his arm as they entered our dining room. "Kyle, meet my husband." Kyle stepped forward with that confident swagger that screams military training, extending his hand with a practiced smile. He was younger than me, maybe 29, with the kind of rugged good looks that Sarah had always found irresistible. Square jaw, piercing blue eyes, the works. But the moment our eyes met, his face went white as fresh snow. The confident smile vanished, his hand trembled slightly as it hung in the air between us. His whole body went rigid, like a soldier snapping to attention without meaning to. "Sir," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were her husband." Sarah's perfectly manicured eyebrows furrowed in confusion. She looked between us like she was watching a tennis match, trying to figure out why her grand reveal had suddenly gone sideways. "Wait," she said slowly, her grip tightening on Kyle's arm. "How do you know each other?" Kyle's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how to explain without revealing too much. "He was my commander," Kyle finally managed, his voice thick with something between respect and terror. "Ghost unit. He saved my life twice." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's face cycled through confusion, realization, and then something approaching horror as the implications sank in. Her boring accountant husband, the man she'd spent months belittling to her friends, had commanded one of the military's most classified special operations units. "Ghost unit?" she repeated like the words were foreign. "But you're an accountant. You work for Henderson and Associates." I finally spoke, my voice calm and measured. "That's my cover, Sarah. Has been for 5 years now. I actually run Obsidian Solutions, private intelligence and security consulting." Kyle's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Ma'am, your husband is a legend. The things he's done, the missions he's led, I owe him everything." Sarah's face flushed red, whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. Probably both. "You never told me," she hissed, rounding on me. "All this time and you let me think—" "Let you think what?" I interrupted, setting down my fork with deliberate precision. "That I was boring, ordinary, not exciting enough for you? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant." I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving hers. "You wanted excitement, Sarah. Something dangerous. Something that would make your friends jealous." I gestured toward Kyle, who looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "Congratulations. You found it." Kyle cleared his throat, his training finally kicking in. "Sir, I should explain." "No need," I said, my tone friendly, but with an edge that Kyle recognized immediately. "Why don't you both sit down? Dinner's getting cold." What followed was the most uncomfortable meal of my life, and I'd once eaten field rations while enemy snipers took pot shots at my position. Sarah kept shooting glances between Kyle and me, her carefully planned evening completely derailed. Kyle barely touched his food, answering my casual questions about his current employment with military precision. It wasn't until Kyle excused himself to use the bathroom that I noticed his jacket had fallen off the back of his chair. A manila envelope peeked out from the inner pocket, thick enough to contain photographs. Old habits die hard. I palmed the envelope in one smooth motion, tucking it into my own jacket just as Kyle returned. "Well," Sarah said when the torturous meal finally ended, "this has been illuminating." Kyle stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "I should go, sir. It was an honor seeing you again." "The honor was mine, soldier," I replied, shaking his hand with just enough pressure to remind him who he was dealing with. After they left, separately, I noted with interest, I retreated to my study and opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of photographs. Our house from multiple angles, Sarah's daily routine, even shots of me leaving for work. Surveillance photos, professionally taken over the course of months. Someone had been watching us, and they'd sent Kyle to get close to Sarah. The question was, why? I spent the next morning in my real office, not the Henderson and Associates cubicle that served as my cover, but the secure facility downtown where Obsidian Solutions operated. The building looked like any other corporate headquarters from the outside, but the security was tighter than most government facilities. My assistant Janet brought me coffee in the morning briefings without comment. She'd been with me since I started the company, a former CIA analyst who understood the value of discretion. If she was curious about why I looked like I hadn't slept, she kept it to herself. I spread Kyle's surveillance photos across my desk, studying them with a professional eye. The angles were perfect, the equipment high-end. This wasn't some jealous ex-boyfriend with a camera phone. This was professional-grade intelligence gathering. My secure phone buzzed. Unknown number. David Hall, I answered. Good morning, Mr. Hall, or should I say Major Hall. The voice was electronically distorted, but there was something familiar about the cadence. Who is this? Someone who's been watching your career with great interest. Your work with Ghost Unit was particularly impressive. That operation in Kandahar, masterful. I felt a chill run down my spine. The Kandahar mission was classified beyond top secret. Only a handful of people knew the details. What do you want? I asked. Direct, I like that. What I want, Major, is your complete client list. Every person and organization that has hired Obsidian Solutions. Their names, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. And why would I give you that? A low chuckle. Because if you don't, your pregnant wife and her unborn child might find themselves in a very dangerous situation. My blood ran cold. Sarah was pregnant? Since when? I can hear the wheels turning, Major. Yes, she's pregnant, about 6 weeks along. She hasn't told you yet because she's not sure if the baby is yours or young Kyle's. I closed my eye, forcing my breathing to remain steady. You're lying. Am I check her medical records? Dr. Patricia Womack, Boston Women's Health Center. Appointment last Tuesday. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then pulled up Sarah's insurance records on my computer. There it was. An appointment with Dr. Womack, just as the voice had said. But here's the thing about being married to a professional paranoid. I'd been tracking Sarah's movements for months. I knew exactly when she'd been with Kyle and when she'd been with me. If she was 6 weeks pregnant, the baby was definitely mine, which meant someone was playing games with information they didn't fully understand. My phone rang again. This time it was Kyle. Sir, we need to talk, he said without preamble. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the old warehouse on Pier 47, 1 hour. The line went dead before I could respond. Pier 47 was in the industrial district, a maze of abandoned buildings and rusted shipping containers. Perfect for a private conversation or an ambush. I arrived early, positioning myself with a clear view of the approaches. Kyle showed up exactly on time, alone and visibly nervous. He kept checking over his shoulder as he approached. Sir, I'm in deep trouble, he said without preamble, and I think I've dragged you into it too. Start talking. 3 months ago, I was approached by someone calling himself Monarch. He knew things about my military service, about my family. He said he had a job for me. What kind of job? Kyle's jaw tightened. Intelligence gathering. He wanted me to get close to your wife, learn about your business, your clients, and you agreed? He had leverage, sir. My mother, she's in trouble, bad trouble. Monarch said he could make her problems disappear if I did this one job. I studied Kyle's face, looking for tells. He was nervous, scared, but I didn't detect any deception. What kind of trouble? She owes money to some very dangerous people, the kind who don't just break your legs when you can't pay. So you seduced my wife. Kyle flinched like I'd slapped him. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was just supposed to get close, maybe befriend her. But Sarah, she was lonely, sir. Frustrated. She made it easy. And now? Now Monarch wants more. He's not satisfied with the information I've gathered. He wants access to your systems, your files. And he's threatening to hurt Sarah if I don't deliver. I was quiet for a long moment, processing. Tell me about your mother. Elena Voss. She runs a small import business, or at least that's what she tells people. The truth is more complicated. The name hit me like a physical blow. Elena Voss. I knew that name. Kyle, I said slowly. What was your father's name? Marcus Voss. He died when I was 12. Some kind of accident overseas. Not an accident. Marcus Voss had been an arms dealer, selling weapons to insurgents in Middle East. My unit had taken him out during a raid on his compound. Elena had been there too, but she'd escaped in the chaos. Kyle didn't know his mother was the enemy, and he didn't know I was the one who'd made him an orphan. Sir, you look like you've seen a ghost? In a way I have, I said. Kyle, I need you to do exactly what I tell you. Your life depends on it. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Touching reunion. 48 hours, Major. Client list or consequences. I looked up to find Kyle staring at me with wide eyes. Sir, what's happening? War, I said simply, and your mother just declared it. That evening, I sat in my car outside Sarah's sister's mansion in Beacon Hill, watching the political elite of Massachusetts mingle at Senator Jenna Pierce's monthly fundraiser. Sarah's car was in the driveway. She'd mentioned the event in passing, another one of those boring political functions I usually avoided. Tonight, I had a different agenda. I'd spent the afternoon digging into Elena Voss's current operations. What I found was a sophisticated money laundering network that stretched from Boston to Brussels, with tentacles reaching into some very respectable institutions, including the campaign fund of one Senator Jenna Pierce. Sarah's sister had always looked down on me, treating me like I wasn't good enough for her family. Tonight, I was going to return the favor. I straightened my tie and walked up the marble steps to the front door. The security guard checked my name against the guest list. I'd had Janet add it that afternoon, along with my cover identity as a senior partner at Henderson and Associates. David, Sarah's voice carried across the crowded foyer. She approached with a champagne flute in hand, her smile brittle around the edges. I didn't know you were coming. Thought I'd surprise you, I said, kissing her cheek. Where's the senator? Holding court in the library, as usual. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What are you really doing here? Can a husband support his sister-in-law's political career? Before Sarah could respond, Jenna Pierce herself appeared, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was 42, 5 years older than Sarah, with the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive maintenance and good breeding. David, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. How unexpected. Senator Pierce. Lovely event. I was just telling Sarah how impressed I am with your recent fundraising success. Jenna's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. We've been fortunate to have some very generous supporters. Yes, I noticed, particularly the donations from Voss International. Quite substantial. The color drained from Jenna's face. I'm sorry, I don't... Elena Voss, import/export business, though I suppose that you know her through different channels. Sarah looked between us, confusion evident on her face. Who's Elena Voss? An old friend of the family, I said, my eyes never leaving Jenna's. Isn't that right, Senator? David, perhaps we should... Oh, I think we should definitely discuss this, especially given the FBI's current interest in Ms. Voss's financial activities. That was a lie, but Jenna didn't know that. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. We need to talk, privately. She led me through the crowd to a small study off the main hallway, closing the door behind us. How much do you know? She asked without preamble. Enough. The question is, how much does Sarah know about her sister's extracurricular activities? Sarah knows nothing, and it needs to stay that way. That depends entirely on how cooperative you're willing to be. Jenna moved to the window, her shoulders tense. What do you want? Information. Elena Voss has been using your campaign as a front to launder money. I want to know everything. How long it's been going on, what other politicians are involved, where the money's really coming from. And if I refuse... I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo. Elena Voss, shaking hands with a known terrorist financier. Then tomorrow morning, the Boston Globe gets a very interesting story about Senator Pierce's connections to international arms dealers. Jenna was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It started 2 years ago. Elena approached me through intermediaries, offered substantial donations for my re-election campaign. The money was clean, or so I was told. But it wasn't. No. By the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. She had documentation of every transaction, every deposit. She owned me. What did she want in return? Information, mostly. Advance notice of certain legislative votes, details about military contracts, that sort of thing. And you gave it to her. I didn't have a choice. I studied Jenna's face, seeing the fear and desperation there. She was trapped, just like Kyle had been. Elena Voss was very good at finding leverage and using it. There's something else, Jenna continued. Elena mentioned you specifically. She knew about your military background, your current business. She's been planning something involving you for months. Did she say what? No, but she seemed very confident that she could force you to cooperate. She said you'd eliminated someone important to her and now it was time for payback. My phone buzzed with another text. Family dinner tomorrow night. Your house. Don't disappoint me. M. Monarch. Elena. Same person, different name. Senator, I said, pocketing my phone. I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself, but you're going to have to trust me completely. What do you need me to do? Exactly what I tell you, when I tell you to do it. Can you handle that? Jenna nodded, though she looked like she might be sick. Good. Now let's go back to your party. And Jenna, if you warn Elena about this conversation, I'll make sure your political career ends in a very public and embarrassing way. We returned to the fundraiser, where Sarah was waiting with barely concealed impatience. What was that about? She demanded. Just business, I said, taking her arm. Come on, let's go home. We need to talk. The drive back to our house was tense and silent. Sarah kept shooting glances at me, clearly wanting to ask questions, but not sure where to start. Once we were inside, I poured myself a scotch and settled into my favorite chair. Sarah remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. Are you going to tell me what's going on? She asked. You're pregnant. The statement hung in the air between us like a loaded weapon. Sarah's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, guilt, defiance. How did you... I know everything, Sarah. The affair, the pregnancy, Kyle's real reason for getting close to you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She sank into the chair across from me, suddenly looking very young and very scared. David, I can explain. No need. The baby's mine, by the way. I've done the math. How can you be so calm about this? Because I've been expecting it. You've been unhappy for months, looking for something to fill the void. Kyle was convenient. And you're not angry? I took a sip of my scotch, considering the question. Oh, I'm furious, but not at you. You're a sufferer in this, Sarah. We both are. I don't understand. Kyle's mother is Elena Voss. She's been using him to get to me, using you as leverage. Everything that's happened, the affair, the pregnancy scare, even Jenna's financial troubles. It's all connected. Sarah's face went pale. What does she want? Revenge. And she's willing to destroy anyone who gets in her way. My phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello, Elena, I said. Very good, David. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. What do you want? Tomorrow night. Dinner at your house, just you, me, and a few old friends. We have so much to catch up on. And if I refuse, then your pregnant wife might have a very unfortunate accident. Pregnancy can be so dangerous, especially in the first trimester. The line went dead. Sarah was staring at me with wide eyes. David, what are we going to do? I finished my scotch and set the glass down with deliberate precision. We're going to end this, once and for all. The next morning, I called in every favor I had. Ben Rodriguez arrived first, my old second-in-command from Ghost Unit, now running his own security consulting firm in D.C. He was a compact man with graying temples and the kind of easy smile that made people underestimate him. Big mistake. So, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk, Elena Voss is back from the dead. Should have known she wouldn't stay buried. You remember her? Hard to forget. She was there when we took down her husband's operation. Slippery as an eel and twice as dangerous. I always wondered why we never tracked her down. She's been building a new network. Money laundering, arms dealing, probably worse. And now she wants payback. What's the play? I outlined my plan, watching Ben's expression grow more concerned with each detail. That's a hell of a risk, Dave. If this goes sideways, it won't. But I need you to coordinate the backup. If Elena brings muscle, I want to be ready. Consider it done. What about Sarah? She's bait. Elena won't make a move as long as she thinks she has leverage. And you're okay with that? I was quiet for a moment. Sarah made her choice when she decided I wasn't exciting enough. Now, she gets to see exactly how exciting my life can be. Ben left to coordinate with the rest of our old unit. 4 men who'd followed me into hell and back, now scattered across various security firms and government agencies. They'd drop everything to help me, just as I'd do for them. Next, I called Kyle. Sir, tonight's the night. Elena's coming to dinner. Jesus! Sir, you can't face her alone. She's got connections, resources. I'm not alone. But I need you to play your part perfectly. Can you do that? What do you need me to do? Exactly what your mother expects. Show up, act nervous, deliver the information she's asked for. Sir, I can't betray you. You're not betraying anyone, Kyle. The information I'm giving you is carefully curated. Elena will think she's won, right up until the moment she realizes she's lost everything. That afternoon, I sat down with Sarah and explained exactly what was going to happen. You want me to act like nothing's wrong? She asked incredulously. I want you to be yourself. Scared, confused, caught between your husband and your lover. It shouldn't be too much of a stretch. She flinched at the barb, but didn't argue. What if something goes wrong? Then you follow the plan we discussed. Get to the safe room and stay there until it's over. David, I need you to know. Save it, Sarah. After tonight, we'll have plenty of time to discuss our marriage, assuming we both survive. At 6 o'clock, I was in my kitchen, preparing dinner like it was any other evening. Beef Wellington, Sarah's favorite. If this was going to be our last meal together, it might as well be a good one. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. Elena Voss was smaller than I remembered, but no less dangerous. She was in her 50s now, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of understated elegance that spoke of old money and older secrets. She wore a simple black dress and pearls, looking like she was heading to the opera rather than a confrontation with the man who'd eliminated her husband. Kyle followed behind her, his face a mask of barely controlled terror. David, Elena said, extending a gloved hand. It's been far too long. Elena, you look well for a dead woman. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Reports of my passing were greatly exaggerated. May we come in? I stepped aside, noting the 2 men who flanked Elena as she entered. Professional muscle, alert, but trying to look casual. They'd be carrying weapons, probably high-end and well-concealed. Sarah appeared in the hallway, looking exactly as nervous as she should. Elena studied her with the calculating gaze of a hunter sizing up prey, and Mrs. Hall, you're even more beautiful than the photographs suggested. Thank you, Sarah managed, her voice barely steady. Shall we go to dinner, I suggested. I've prepared something special. We moved to the dining room, where I'd set the table for 5. Elena took the seat at the head of the table. A calculated insult that I let pass without comment. Her bodyguards positioned themselves by the windows, their eyes constantly moving. This is quite lovely, Elena said, cutting into her beef. Very domestic. I can see why Kyle was so taken with your wife. Kyle's fork clattered against his plate. Mother, please. Oh, didn't you tell them? Elena's smile was razor sharp. Kyle is my son, my only child, in fact. The last piece of my dear husband that I have left. Sarah's face went white. Kyle, you said your mother was in import/export. She is, I interjected. She imports weapons and exports violence. It's a family business. How droll, Elena said. Yes, Marcus and I built quite an empire together, until your husband homicided him in cold blood. Your husband was selling weapons to terrorists, I replied calmly. The blood on his hands wasn't cold. It was still warm. Elena's composure cracked slightly, a flash of rage breaking through her cultured facade. He was a businessman. You had no right. I had every right, and if you'd stayed buried, I would have let sleeping dogs lie. But you didn't, did you? You had to come back. You had to make it personal. You eliminated my husband. How much more personal could it be? I set down my fork and looked directly into Elena's eyes. You used my wife. You corrupted her sister. You turned your own son into a weapon against me. Marcus was a soldier in a war. What you've done is terrorism. Terrorism? Elena laughed. David, you disappoint me. This is simply business. Unfinished business. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table to me. Your client list, every name, every contract, every dirty little secret. Transfer it all to this device, and I'll consider our debt settled. And if I refuse? Elena nodded to one of her men, who pulled out a pistol and aimed it at Sarah's head. Then your wife dies, followed by your unborn child, followed by you. Sarah whimpered, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Kyle started to rise from his chair, but Elena's sharp look froze him in place. You have 30 seconds to decide, Elena continued. Your business or your family? I pretended to consider, letting the tension build. Then I smiled. Actually, Elena, I have a third option, which is, you die tonight here and your son watches. Elena's eye narrowed. You're bluffing. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Am I? That's when the lights went out. In the darkness that followed, everything happened at once. Elena's men shouted commands, their weapons sweeping the room. Sarah screamed. Kyle dove under the table, and I went to work. The first gunman went down hard, courtesy of the ceramic plate I'd palmed from the table. It caught him in the temple with a wet crack, and he dropped like a stone. His weapon clattered across the hardwood floor. The second gunman was better trained. He'd moved to cover Elena the moment the lights failed, his weapon trained on where I'd been sitting. Too bad I wasn't there anymore. I came at him from the side, using the dining room table as cover. He got off one shot, wild, panicked, before I was on him. A quick strike to his wrist sent his tool flying. A follow-up to his throat put him on the ground, gasping for air. The emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a hellish red glow. Elena stood in the corner, a small pistol in her hand, her earlier composure completely gone. You fool, she snarled. You planned this. Every detail, I confirmed, stepping over her unconscious bodyguard. Did you really think I'd invite you into my home without preparing for every contingency? Kyle, she shouted. Eliminate him. Eliminate him now. Kyle emerged from under the table, but instead of attacking me, he moved to shield Sarah. No, Mother, he said quietly. This ends now. Elena's face twisted with rage and betrayal. You worthless child. Everything I did was for you, for us. You did it for revenge, Kyle replied. You used me, just like you used everyone else, just like Father used you. Don't you dare. He was going to leave you, wasn't he? That's what this is really about. Father was planning to disappear with his money and his weapons, and you couldn't stand the thought of being abandoned. Elena's tool wavered, her mask finally slipping completely. He promised me. He promised we'd be together forever. He lied, just like you've been lying to me my entire life. I used Elena's distraction to close the distance between us. One quick move and her pistol was in my hand instead of hers. It's over, Elena, I said. Your network is compromised, your money is frozen, and your son has chosen his side. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and showed her a recording app that had been running throughout dinner. Every word you've said tonight has been transmitted to the FBI, the DEA, and Interpol. Senator Pierce has already agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Elena sank into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 50-plus years. You've destroyed everything. You destroyed it yourself the moment you decided to come after my family. The sound of sirens filled the air, my backup arriving right on schedule. Ben appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn, followed by two other members of our old unit. Everything under control? He asked. Just cleaning up, I replied. As the FBI agents led Elena away in handcuffs, she turned back to me one last time. This isn't over, David. I have friends, resources. Had, I corrected. Past tense. Your friends are either dead or in custody, and your resources belong to the government now. She opened her mouth to say something else, but the agent pushed her forward and she was gone. Kyle stood in the wreckage of my dining room, looking lost and uncertain. Sir, what happens to me now? That depends. Your mother's crimes aren't your crimes, Kyle. You were manipulated, used. The question is, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? I want to make amends, if that's possible. I studied his face, looking for deception and finding none. It's possible, but it won't be easy. I understand, sir. Good. Ben will debrief you, get your statement. After that, we'll see about finding you a new purpose. Kyle nodded and followed Ben out of the room, leaving me alone with Sarah. She sat in her chair, staring at the bloodstains on our hardwood floor. Is it really over? She asked. The immediate threat? Yes. Elena's finished. And us? I was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. That's up to you, Sarah. You made choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. You did. But you were also manipulated by a professional. Elena's been planning this for years, looking for ways to get to me. You were convenient. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Can you forgive me? Eventually, but forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. Our marriage will never be what it was. What does that mean? It means we start over. New rules, new expectations. You want excitement? You've got it. But from now on, you get it as my partner, not as my sufferer. I don't understand. I moved to the window, looking out at the FBI vehicles that filled our driveway. Obsidian Solutions is expanding. We're going international, taking on bigger contracts. I'll need someone I can trust to handle the domestic operations. You want me to work for you? I want you to work with me, but only if you're ready to see exactly who I really am. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. And if I'm not? Then we get divorced, and you find yourself a nice, boring accountant who will never put you in danger. She stood up and moved to stand beside me at the window. What about the baby? The baby is mine, regardless. That won't change. And Kyle? What about him? Will I see him again? I turned to look at her, seeing something I hadn't expected in her eyes. Not love for Kyle, but concern. Genuine worry for someone she'd cared about, even if that caring had been built on lies. Probably. If he proves himself, I might offer him a job. He's got skills, and he's learned some hard lessons about loyalty. You'd trust him? I'd give him a chance to earn trust. There's a difference. Sarah nodded slowly. What happens now? Now, we clean up the mess, answer a lot of questions, and figure out how to move forward. Together? I put my arm around her shoulders, feeling her lean into me despite everything that had happened. Together, I confirmed. But Sarah? If you ever betray me again, there won't be a third chance. I understand. Good. Because this is just the beginning. Elena's network was bigger than just her. There are other players, other threats. If you're going to be part of this world, you need to be ready for anything. Sarah looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the woman I'd married. Strong, determined, unafraid. I'm ready, she said. 3 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. We named him Marcus, not after Elena's husband, but after my grandfather, a man who'd understood the difference between justice and revenge. Kyle proved himself over the following year, working his way up from surveillance to field operations. He never spoke about his mother, and I never asked. Some wounds are too deep for words. Senator Jenna Pierce resigned from office and cooperated fully with the federal investigation. She served 2 years in minimum security prison and now works for a nonprofit that helps sufferers of financial crimes. As for Elena, she died in federal custody 6 months after her arrest. Heart attack, the official report said. I knew better. In prison, debts have a way of coming due, and Elena had made a lot of enemies over the years. I kept my promise to Sarah about excitement. Obsidian Solutions grew into one of the most respected security firms in the world, handling everything from corporate espionage to international abducting cases. Sarah turned out to have a natural talent for the work, particularly the psychological aspects of threat assessment. But the most important change was in our marriage. The lies were gone, replaced by a partnership built on mutual respect and shared danger. Sarah never complained about being bored again. Because when you're married to someone who's seen the worst humanity has to offer and chosen to stand against it, every day is an adventure. And sometimes that's exactly what you need.